Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. Today's episode is going to be both trippy and weird because I have my beloved friend Dan Hammond with me. Dan has earned the right to be called friend, and he's partly brother. We're some sort of weird partnership that's going to be building. And honestly, if Jeff was to build a think tank, Dan is one of the few people that has a seat just because he is who he is. Dan, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll talk a little bit about what business interrogation does.
All right. Well, basically, uh, my greatest skill set is winning the friendship of Jeff, and then that's pretty much the alpha and the omega. If you can solve that equation, you've mastered something. But seriously though, I do have an interrogation background. I have done entrepreneuring and corporate work and worked in third world countries, and I'm a Swiss Army chainsaw. Just like bring me people who are stuck and let me unravel things and find out what's the question that unlocks the solution. And also, I just a couple of things that I've done is I walked into a physical security company. I'd never run a physical security company. I have a military background, so I know something about it. But a friend of mine had a company, 435 employees, and he said, my company's bleeding money. I don't know what's going on. Can you figure it out? And I said, I don't know. Let me go talk. Let me go look. And so I looked and I saw how big the company was. And I said, I think to figure it out, you'd have to put me in charge. And he goes, okay, you're in charge. And so within 3 months, I found $1 million of hidden debt he didn't know about within the company. I restructured his company. I changed onboarding processes so he wouldn't lose money every time he brought in new clients. I found new revenue streams. I was paying my own salary, paid off in 3 months all of the personal loans he'd taken out to help the company, and got the company where it was humming along, right? I mean, we weren't out of the woods, but at least we weren't in the red every month, paying our bills. And, I think that I'd never done it before. Never run a company of that size. I ran Little Caesars Pizza. It's a little different. Negotiating with the heads of the most powerful companies for security. Even did presidential security detail while I was there. I protected some critical infrastructure out on Roatan, which is way outside of my normal operating zone, but figured out a way to say yes, help people, and pay bills.
I love that. And for what it's worth, I think a lot of people watching this are going to want to filter and say, this is possible, this is impossible. I think you and I chew on impossible for breakfast. Is that fair?
I grant you that there are some things that are extremely difficult. But I also think a lot of it is how much are you willing to allow your thinking to be disrupted? And labeling something impossible is effectively putting it in a box where you don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't think that will solve any of the world's big problems. I think being more open to like if you said something were impossible to me, Jeff, the way my mind works, I would be like, what are the prerequisites that make that would have to exist for us to be able to start to work that problem, right?
Yeah.
And so, maybe we would need time travel. Well, if we can solve for time travel, then we can work the impossible project, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean, maybe, and then you're like, well, time travel is impossible. Now, okay, well, we've got a separate thing with a separate set. But, when somebody tells me, say something that's an impossible vision, right? I don't dismiss that vision. I'm like, well, what would it take to make it come real? And backward reverse engineer to where we are now and the capabilities we currently have, maybe even capabilities within our budget, because, Obviously, Elon can solve problems that 99.9% of humanity can't, because he can throw money at it.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm thinking about a Sherlock Holmes quote: "When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." I think a lot of people, I'm going to offend people, but they hear impossible and it triggers their lazy thinking and they go, okay, back to what I was doing. Whereas I think you or I, when we hear impossible, our ears perk up and our brain goes, but what if it was?
Right. Yeah. And for me, I mean, obviously, I have a faith background, and I've seen too many miracles in my life to go, oh, well, physics won't allow that, or, modern medicine can't solve for that. There's things out there that I know are not comprehensible in my own mind, but I think people who strive for impossible or very, very, very difficult things, they stay focused and they continue to work the problems. Eventually, I mean, you can hand a monkey a Rubik's Cube, and if he turns it enough times, eventually it'll get solved. There may be no rhyme or reason to which way he turns it, but just randomly, eventually, that solves itself.
Yeah. It's funny, with all of the space stuff, we've been rewatching some old movies, and of course, Apollo 13. And I think you and I would have fun in the Houston Command Center, because the phrase that really resonated with me was "work the problem." It was, and I love the scene where they're trying to adapt the carbon scrubbing filters, and they dump this box out, and it was like, if I ever went to space, I would take a case or a crate of duct tape, because I feel like it fixes a lot of stuff. But I love the way NASA approaches problems, because you're starting with the very undesirable end goal of, we're not scrubbing this mission and losing the crew. How do we bring them back?
Yeah. And, my partner worked on training those astronauts. So, my partner, Ted, in customer driven leadership. I think it's amazing. It's great to be part of the Houston community and to know astronauts and be friends with them. But yeah, you're right. I mean, think about it. Let's look at Artemis 2, right? So Jeremy Hansen is a friend of mine, and you got to realize how much space do you have? How much weight can you carry, right? What are the most effective things, the most necessary things for me to send with you, so that when the unexpected happens, you have the right tools to solve for that? I think those are super interesting questions. And then once you're out there, then you have no other choices. What can you make do with what you have? And I think, from my perspective, there's always something you can do toward the good. And sometimes it's really, really hard. I mean, we've sent crews that haven't made it.
Yep.
So you've got to be thinking, and again, every country weighs those risks differently, right? I think our countries care very much about the people we send, and want nothing more than to fight for every second of our opportunity to bring them back safely.
Yeah. And to me, that was, when Christina Cox said we're all part of the crew, I think that was a profound thing. And it's funny because I can't remember what she actually took up, but weight was an issue. So she had her personal item and she had to scale it back. I think that's one of the fundamentals. When your dreams keep you firmly on the ground, you're not so worried about what you're taking up or how you come back. You're just getting from point A to point B. And I think most linear thinkers, that's how they live their lives.
Yeah. Well, and that's, yeah. And it reminded me of an interesting story. The church that I went to for 40 some odd years, donated a Bible to an astronaut. And I mean, it consumed most of his personal weight, but it's sitting on the moon if you ever swing by there and you want to read.
I love it.
Yeah. But yeah, you're, I would say some of the things that I've heard that I really like are, the different thinking methods. There's a lot of different ways of thinking, and emergent thinking and divergent thinking are two that I feel resonate with me very much. I can break a problem apart, work the individual components, and then pull the what's good with each component back together and see how I can reconnect them to maximize outcomes. And I think, I would say my first hint that that's sort of what my superpower is was actually from a corporate boss who basically said, Daniel, you're the best at all the things that you do in the cyber exercise world. And then at the end, kind of felt like he still hadn't complimented me enough. He did just say I was the best at everything. I don't know how he felt that, but anyway, he just kind of blurted out, basically, Daniel, everything you touch gets better. And I was like, wow, that's actually, and of course it wasn't written in my performance evaluation or anything like that, but it let me know that's where my heart is. I want to positively impact every person and every project that I'm around.
Well, it's a fascinating thing because I know you and I, we've had many, many conversations about cybersecurity. To you, that's just one of the ways you exercise your brain. I think you and we get along well because we're both fascinated by the little, I say I can zoom in or out. I can be a telescope or I can be a microscope. Some days I'm the wrong tool for the problem, but I always figure it out. But I think for me personally, and I'm going to project this is probably similar to you, we solve the little things and we're like, yeah, don't bug me. I'm working on this, but we don't notice the progress we've made because we haven't solved the big one yet. Is that fair? Because it feels like, to me, that's one of my challenges is celebrating the incremental wins when I'm waiting for the exponential win.
Yeah, I think I can see that, and especially in that's interesting. For me, I would say, and this is sort of where my business interrogation, right? I launched with a bold premise that I could solve somebody's most complicated business problem in 20 minutes or less.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've interrogated, I don't know, over 40 people. And in 20 minutes, when I'm focused on you and your problem, I can deconstruct it into solvable pieces. And it's happened over and over again. At scale, right? Anywhere from solopreneurs all the way up to CEOs of 10 million revenue company, I'd say was probably the biggest. But again, I know that I wasn't stretching anymore for the $10 million revenue company, and I'm sure I can solve $1 billion problems in the same scalable way. But I'm not the fixer of the thing. I just want to help you get clarity around what your next step is, and the step after that. I think one of the things that I've coined is I liquid blueprint your problem. So it's not just a blueprint that gets you where you want to go, but as the variables change, the blueprint self-optimizes, right? We can go in and go, oh, well, now that you've solved this little thing over here, that unlocks this whole new path that we can take to get where you say you want to go. But it's never about me. And that's what's hard for me is people are like, well, what are your goals? And I'm like, my goals are to help more people do more things for the betterment of the world. Right.
Yeah. And I think, again, I know faith is a big thing for you. And I think, I'm fascinated by Alcoholics Anonymous because the fact that they built in the identity change and they built in the higher power, I think a lot of it, the reason it's still around today is because of that separation of self. I am broken, I am an alcoholic, to being part of something bigger. I'm fascinated by that because I think a lot of what we see today is very much, again, going back to the individual. It's almost, I don't know if it's hubris or arrogance or whatever, but you're seeing people turning their back on faith and saying, well, this is my accomplishment. And it's like, yeah, nobody is a self-made person anymore. We're all made by others, but it's also the connections to the higher universe, the higher self. I think when I talk to you, one of the things that fascinates me is we are not 1 + 1. When we start playing around together, we find 111,000 million different directions.
Yeah, well, yeah, that doesn't necessarily laser focus us anywhere, but yeah, I mean, and that's where it's fun. I mean, it's like when you can explore what's possible. And the ARC conference just took place in London, and I was there last year, and I had a ticket this year, didn't make it, but I really like a lot of the thinking that comes out of ARC, which is the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. Their arcforum.com, I think, is their address, their URL, but just a lot of really deep thinkers there. And the part of the problem is it's not about like surrendering yourself so much. One of the great, humility, people sometimes will say, Daniel, you're not very humble. And I'm like, well, I'm really confident in my capabilities, but I love the definition of humility. That humility isn't thinking less about yourself, it's thinking about yourself less, right?
Yeah.
And that's where it is, right? I mean, it doesn't serve the world for me to downplay what I can do to help people. And again, yes, I help people because I believe in a higher power. I think, I don't, with that component missing from my life, I would have such a giant hole in whatever the secular equivalent of a soul would be. That because here's the thing, Jeff, if you understand how systems work, right, and you believe that you weren't part of a system with that higher power, then all the rules are made up. And what would restrain you? Good is relative without a God. And so, serial killers' morals are no worse than anybody else's in a world without a God, a loving God. So, that's sort of my perspective. And I know that I would know that, and I would play by a totally different rule set, which is, frightening to me for sure.
Well, I think it's funny because you and I, we solve problems because we can. And, I've had people say, well, it's arrogant of you to think you can solve that. And it's like, but if I can solve it, isn't it wrong of me to not try?
Yeah. And I think, for me, again, there's a filter, right? Just because you can solve a problem doesn't mean you should. Yeah. Right. I mean, there is evil in the world. And I've gotten my kind of value statement down to, I focus and multiply the vision or the goal of, I focus and multiply the vision of others in real time for the good of the world. That's what I do. And so that good of the world is that key thing is, am I giving you, for example, let's take real like digital ID, right?
Yeah.
It could do a lot to protect people. It is also something that could switch in an instant to be the totalitarian tool that controls your access to everything.
Yeah.
Do I want to be part of building that? I'm scared. I'm scared to do that.
It's eerie that you say that because I see a lot of people who are setting up businesses using free Gmail accounts, and then they lose access to that account and their business is shut down. And I'm like, I feel like you put way too much faith in a free product. But it is funny because I see a lot of that on social media. It's like, oh, we gave everything to Google and now we're locked out. It is
Facebook, Instagram, whenever you're building your business on somebody else's infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's on like that.
It's funny because I have not used Facebook for a very long time. And a friend of mine was like, oh, I need you to log in and do something. And apparently my account got hacked a long time ago and somebody else has been using it. I managed to...
At least that keeps it active.
Yeah, but I'm now banned for life. I have a permanent ban, and I'm like, oh, well. So I don't know what even fraudulent me is doing on Facebook, but apparently I've been banned for life. So shame on me. I'll just take my lumps and move on. But it is when you see things, all-knowing, all-powerful beings, what's the checks and balances? And I think people like you and I were always looking at, okay, this is the good intention. How is somebody going to corrupt this or weaponize it?
100%.
I'm almost positive the very first use of humanity for the stick was to knock food out of trees. And I'm sure the second use was to knock somebody over the head and take their food. I mean, that's just the way humans can be. So
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think I'm very, very interested in it's just, I'm super transparent, right? Anything that's a top-down solution, there's a poison pill in it. I guarantee you there's a poison pill in it. I mean, the thing they say that they want to do, save the climate, is not the thing they're trying to do. It's just not. It never is. And you can see, I mean, the climate changes. Hey, I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe our ability to influence that is highly limited. Short of launching all our nukes. I bet you we could heat up the planet considerably if we did that. I'd be afraid of that outcome.
Yeah, that doesn't feel ideal to me. Now, I want to pivot slightly because part of the point of the podcast is people watch this and go, I like Dan, I want to work with them. So what does working with you look like in terms of business interrogation? What's the easy first step for them?
Yeah. I mean, just reach out. LinkedIn is probably the easiest place to get hold of me. But once you find me, you won't lose me unless unless you're unethical or that's the problem about being an interrogator. I see through those kind of offers pretty quickly. But if you've got a big goal, a big problem, the thing that you've got a problem that either you can't quantify or qualify, or that traditional solutions haven't solved for you. That's a no-brainer from my perspective. I think the way you market your company in most cases, and not in my case, but in most cases, is I have solution X. Who needs X? Right? And I guess I'm that way too, except for me, X is a variable.
X is literally whatever it needs to be, right?
You need. And again, I've interrogated people on weapons of mass destruction, how they made it, how they put it together, what they dual use devices and complex, avoiding, sanctions, restrictions, and things like that. I've interrogated war criminals and all of that stuff. So I don't have PhDs in all of those things, but I can ask the questions that pull the things together to me. I can black box complexity and solve around them, and then expand the box, right? Once I understand what the inputs and outputs are, I understand, well, what has to happen inside that black box, and that leads to comprehension. So I guess what I'm saying is I have not met a problem that is too complicated for me.
Love it. And I think that's the, if I may, you and I want those impossible problems that everybody stopped talking about because, it's become the boundary. And I find it fascinating because a lot of times the boundary exists and nobody's ever actually tested it. Totally weird story, but as a kid, my dad would send me out to test fencing and he'd forget to tell me that they were electric. And I'd find out, oh yeah, this is working. But only by touching them did you know that it was or wasn't sometimes. And
there's a little buzzing in the air sometimes. It's funny you should mention that because, one of the jobs I had was signals intelligence. And the funny thing about signals intelligence is one of the jobs you do is you jam radio frequencies.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if you don't know what jamming is, you have no idea you're being jammed. But if you all of a sudden you'll hear somebody go, "Hey, I'm so-and-so talking on the radio," and then you'll hear this. And if you know what jamming is, you're like, "Oh, that guy's getting jammed."
Yeah.
But if not, they just disappeared, and you're like, "I don't know, there's something wrong with the signal." But once it's like once that light switch is on, you always know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's jamming.
Well, for what it's worth, as a kid, I learned how to test fences without touching them. So
that's good.
Zap me once, shame on you. Zap me twice, shame on me.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, growing in knowledge is super important, I think, for people like us. Like, I mean, I don't want to solve for X and then sell X because there's other things to chase. For me, it's the solving the problem that's fun. It's not even doing the work. I'm a good partner in helping you along the route of actually doing the doing, but that's not where, have somebody else like Jeff touch your electric fence.
Well, for what it's worth, I think one of the biggest insights I have on you is that there are the truly unique visionaries who are out there and they can see things. And then there's the beloved integrators who will take those big ideas and run with them. And what I see you as is the bridge between the two, because you put me in a room full of integrators and somebody's head's going to explode and it's not mine. Right. Whereas I think you've got that bandwidth to see the visionary and translate it into the tactical, which is a hugely rare skill in my world.
100%. In fact, I have absolutely used that description before, being part of the strategic coach community. A lot of people are the visionaries or the integrators. I tested on both. I speak both languages, but even more than that, the visionaries that are out there, those really, because a visionary entrepreneur could just be a guy who can solve a problem or a woman who has a solution for something. And that's their vision, is to solve that one thing. But then there's those visionaries that have 1,000 ideas a day. I can keep up with that level of complexity and flow, right? One of my friends who is one of those visionaries said, "Oh, you're a bounce head." And I can absorb whatever you throw at me at speed, understand it, which, that's the thing. Jeff, how many people do you talk to that just look at you like with a blank face, that just look at like, I didn't know you could speak ancient Greek, if that's what that is, right?
Yeah. What language? I hear a lot. What language was that? And I'm like, English. Okay. Yes, I annoy the average linear thinker because I can play ping pong with an idea across the galaxy, and I see the connection, but they're tracking where the ball is, and I'm telling them where it's going to be in 5 years, and they're like, I don't believe you. So
and that's the other thing too, is I find a lot of those visionaries will see, like you see where the ball is 5 years from now, right? And you can get it there, but like, are you the best person to break down the steps that get that ball there when it's supposed to be there. And that's one of the things that I help. And again, it's not like I have all the answers in my head, but I will ask you the questions to help you solve your own problems in an elegant way. And again, it's not just to maximize outcomes, but it's also to minimize risk, to minimize where things can go horribly wrong for you. Because that's one of the things, I hear all the time, people will go, oh, we're going to do it this way. And I'm like, oh man, that's not a good choice.
Have you considered X, Y, and Z, right?
Well, but here's the problem. Here's the problem with that, Jeff. That works if it's steps 1, 2, or 3. But if it's steps 6, 7, 12, 15, 18, you can explain it to them all you want, but if you can't build the bridge back to the limit of their capability to see forward, it doesn't matter. You're speaking Greek.
I had a fascinating aha moment this morning because I was talking to somebody and I was trying to figure out how do I simplify it. And I realized that I can simultaneously see the acorn as the seed, the little seedling, the sapling, blah, 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 up until the massive tree. And then I can see the house that tree becomes 500 years from now. And I realized that most people can't see the acorn. They're still waiting for it to drop. And I was like, oh my God, I'm talking about the tree and the life it'll shelter and, all the animals that'll grow in the branches. And they're still trying to figure out where the hell's the acorn. So that was my aha moment. So I think I could be that bounce head, but honestly, what I've realized is I don't make a good bounce head for a linear thinker because I break them very quickly.
Yeah. And I would say, one of the things that many visionaries like that are not neurodivergent, right? And I would say I am not neuronormal, but I'm not neurodivergent in a way that you could easily articulate. I think faster. I'm smart. I'm empathetic. I am adaptable. And so, I'm not the visionary that's going to think of all of the, because I don't have the desire, the wonder, if I'm using Lissione's terms, right? I'm not the wonder guy. I'm the discernment invention guy. Give me your problem. I'll give you 100 ways to solve it, and I'll pick the best one that leads to the best outcome for you based on your requirements, right? And your understanding of what success looks like.
I love it. Now, Dan, I could talk to you all day, but I will be mindful that we're having another conversation shortly. Thank you so much for giving me your time and attention and for hanging out on the show.
We should sell the first 20 minutes of our conversation. People should pay heavy for that one because it was good. It was good. Always a pleasure.
Before we wrap, I'm going to throw a challenge out to the universe. I would love to play with Dan and have a $1 billion problem that everybody says is impossible to solve. Throw it at us, and it'll cost you nothing for us to tackle it. If we solve it, figure out what it's worth to you. But I would love $1 billion, and I'd settle for $100 million problem, but $1 billion problem would be something I'd chew on for a while.
That sounds awesome to me.
Awesome. Thanks, my friend.
All right. Take care.